have essential requirements from another 7 more areas. It covers everything that you can think of: emissions, radiations, your material that is used, the tests to be performed. I think all of this can go into that concept of registry that Barbara spoke about. Well, in the IoT space, I mean, as we ourselves are started doing some of these things, and we believe the system needs to evolve considerably before we actually can say we are at a point where services can be offered both for cities and for both for IoT and for cities. We don't have the kind of infrastructure. If I'm trying to develop a hardware device here in India, and we are doing it, but the cost and the effort is huge. Just to go from one cycle of designing an IoT device to get it to production, get the volumes required, get the sourcing. I'm sure there are a number of ESDM vendors here, hopefully, or a number of you may be working for ESDM vendors. But just the cycle is painful. You'd rather just design and get it, source it from somewhere else. But implementing it here, just soldering it to a precision is a complex task. Failures are extremely high if you get it soldered here in Chennai or in Bangalore. I think we need to move to a point where we can get some of these things done really well. And of course, the hardware space, I mean, I really cannot say the hardware space is not VC friendly. If you talk to a VC about hardware, even if you finish the sentence hardware, they tell you, goodbye. This is the challenges in the smart city space. You have your engagement model. I spoke about engagement models, but no, it's not easy for a startup or a small company, or even for a big company, really, to work with administration and cities. Business models, very small right now. Your auditing and documentation. I mean, just to get one document out has taken us 1 year. Doesn't really work. Your timelines, that's the other related to it. Your safety net. When a small change happens, the entire project can go for a toss. A small requirement is not met with, the entire project can go for a toss. Anyway, these are all pain points from a person who's actually done things in this and decided, I'd rather step in very carefully, lock in these tempting processes. Bharadwaj spoke a lot about data, and just before this, I told him that in India, now the administration has decided that they will appoint something called a Data Analytics and Monetizing Agency. They call it DAMA, which will be appointed by the government to monetize data, because they have realized that when these different systems are in place, every state government can now have two pieces, well, one in the center, of course. They have two technological infrastructures. One is the telecom the spectrum used by telecom, the other is data. So they have identified DAMA as an entity which every city will have and help the city monetize the data. And this actually comes from research recently published, maybe not recently, but a year ago, which says that in the open data space, the opportunity is about $3 to $5 trillion annually. Every year, there is $3 to $5 trillion worth of opportunity that is got by just making data public. And 15% of that is actually supposed to be India's contribution. That's a worldwide number. 15% of that is supposed to be India's contribution. So yes, there is the recognition, the realization that data is to be monetized. And we are working towards that. In fact, this is something that we're working in India, in Karnataka, in Bengaluru, an open data initiative with crowdsourcing. I asked Bharadwaj to be part of this sometime back. It is about gathering data from public sources about pollution, and well, it's still work in progress. We're still defining it, but some of the aspects are, of course, you have an app on your phone. I don't know how well, maybe it'll work in sophisticated phones. But they also want to give out sample cardboard pieces which are chemically treated. You can just get it off, and then take a picture of that. You take a picture of that. And depending on the analysis of the picture, on the gray areas or the blue areas or other areas that the picture identifies, because you'll have to have a good camera, they realize what is the kind of pollution there in that locality or that area, and what kind of pollution is causing it. And of course, you have your simple do-it-yourself kits as well, where you can buy and add it to your Arduino or kits like that. This is what is happening. The platform is the most important piece, because the platform actually gives weights, saying that data from my system may be poor, but data from Naveen's system has got higher level of accuracy, so they will give him more weightage. So things like that is what the system is working on. It's a deep learning and deep analysis platform. This is what you eventually should get going. With that, I'll end here. And I believe that with IoT and with what you're trying to do, we will work towards what are known as more sentient economies, and economies or systems that are self-reliant, self-aware, and therefore can do things better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bipin. Thank you very much for highlighting and challenges and so. So maybe one quick question, just for sort of time. One quick question.
Hello. You spoke about the VCs shunning out hardware startups. It's a little difficult to get funding from VCs. But when you're talking about smart cities, hardwares are something that startups will have a lot of ideas to come up with startups. And this is my own personal experience that people don't really encourage hardware. When you go with a hardware idea, they are like, "ठीक है, बाद में देखते हैं," that kind of response. Any workaround for that? What do you?
I think we all have to work together to get the system, and the system I'm talking about the ecosystem, to realize the value that hardware plays. Unfortunately, for a while, hardware is seen as a commoditized play, and not much value associated with it, probably because it cannot get that kind of scale, and or because a certain amount of capital needs to be invested and the relationship is linear. They don't see exceptional growth with the hardware. This could be the reasons. But Apple has clearly demonstrated how much hardware is integral to their play. I guess the market has to, we have to educate, and it will probably be some more time before it becomes mainstream.
Okay, thank you, Bipin. And he is available during tea time, so you can ask him any other clarification. So I request Mr. Kishore to hand over a token of appreciation to Bipin. The next person we have is another genius, who is, you can say, a serial inventor and discoverer, Dr. Dilip Krishnaswamy. Dr. Dilip is currently serving as Vice President, New Technology Initiative at Reliance Jio Infocom Limited. He has worked as a senior scientist at IBM Research, as a senior staff researcher in the Office of Chief Scientist at Qualcomm, and as a platform architect at Intel. He has taught at the University of California, Davis. He is an inventor of 62 granted US patent, 70 plus peer review journal and publications. Out of that, 3 best paper award he has been given. Dr. Dilip is also associated with ComSoc. He is the chair-elect, and he will be commanding from next year. His research interest in distributed information processing, distributed function virtualization, distributed resource management, blockchain technology, edge services, NFV SDN, NV-IoT, 5G architecture and systems. He served as Associate Editor-in-Chief of IEEE Wireless Communication in 2009 and 14. Recently, he chaired at the PAT Goldenberg CSE Math Best Paper Competition from IBM Research Worldwide. So let us invite Dr. Dilip. I'll just, before inviting him, I'll tell you one instance. We say that 5G research and 5G is a very complex task, right? And when we listen to him, a complete architecture of 5G, he sliced into more than 500 pieces. And for him, it seems that it is a very easy one, 5G design, right? So he is such a genius person with us. Let us listen to him, what he has to say about smart city. Thank you. Dilip.
Naveen, that was weird. So actually, since I'm following Bharadwaj, I thought I wouldn't have much left to say by the time he's done talking. Can I hear? Yeah? So I thought I'll just focus on one topic and maybe dispel some of the myths that's happening with blockchain. And actually, can you go to the last slide? Last slide. Do I have a? Where is it? This one. How do you? Sorry. So actually, I don't know if this is fake news or not, but on some website, the Prime Minister Modi actually made this comment. You can want to read it, right? So, blockchain is going through a major hype, and and we all know, and so, and also it's being used in many different ways, and so just thought I'll cover some of these concepts, and then we can see what we can use, and I've jotted down some use cases that I'll just go over. Generally you say, okay, you have a whole bunch of entities sitting, coming together to share information. Traditionally, they were probably there were manual processes involved in the sharing of information. So now you try to bring them together on some automated platform that allows some processing to happen. It doesn't necessarily replace existing systems. It tries to complement existing systems. This is in some sort of a permission, private kind of space where a small set of entities come together. That's a different version of blockchain compared to what you've seen of Bitcoin and all of that, which are public blockchains. And you've heard of crypto tokens and cryptocurrencies and things like that. And there, as you hand off the coin, you have to use your private key to hand off the coin to the public key of the new owner. And the public key of the new owner sits on the coin, and now everybody knows who that new owner is only based on the key. You don't really know who the owner of the key is. And so then that user passes it on, and essentially everything is happening in a very anonymized fashion, and RBI and SEC and regulators are all really afraid of getting into that space, But if you are in a permission network, actually what happens in these, that's the kind of flavor of blockchain system that we could think about. Now, there are different flavors of blockchain platforms, and the word distributed ledger technology is used interchangeably with blockchain. If you think about a platform like Hyperledger Fabric that IBM drove in the ecosystem, and it's open source, it's in that permission realm, and every node has its own copy of the ledger. And then as all the transactions get processed, every node may be processing transactions in a different order, and so they'll all submit stuff to a common orderer, and then a sequence of blocks comes out. Each block may contain a whole bunch of transactions within, and then you would compute what's called a hash for a block, and you compute the hash for the block and then put it as part of the bytes for the next block, and then the hash of this aggregated thing, which is the bytes of this block plus the hash that came in, is then sent out to the next block and so on. So there's a hash chain that happens, and every node has a copy of the ledger which has the same hash chain. So that's one extreme version of a DLT, a distributed ledger, where everybody has the same ledger, and the ledger is a same hash chain of blocks and things like that. And then people realized, okay, it's not just one blockchain, there can be many different types of transactions going on, or subgroups of nodes interacting, where they may just want to process information together. So the concept came into regard to channels and ledgers for each of those channels. A channel is basically a subset of nodes that may interact, and they only want to share between them. And when they have a result, they put it out into another channel or another group of nodes. So those kinds of things happen, and yet everybody is having this same common ledger. Even in that subset of nodes, they will all try to build the same ledger, which is a very robust way of doing things. Now, there is another technology called R3 Corda, where it's a distributed ledger technology, but people use the term blockchain for it as well, but there is no hash chaining there. But it's actually, if you perhaps do a performance testing on it, you might get much higher performance, because all that happens is one node processes and distributes information to the other nodes that need to receive it. So not everybody is seeing every transaction and the outcome of every transaction. Only the nodes that need to know are seeing the outcome of each transaction, which means everybody's ledger is totally different, and there is no hash chaining of blocks. But even that is a system that is very useful. That is, when you think of IoT and smart cities, and we have information flowing around, and Professor Bharadwaj was talking about that platform that's enabling sharing of information. This kind of a flavor of DLT might actually be better than going through everybody processing the same transaction, going through a consensus mechanism and storing, and that, because that has a bit of a performance impact. So there are these two extremes, and somewhere you can straddle along. A middle ground could be that you could actually create a hash chain of blocks, but you publish the hash somewhere else, so that everybody, once you've published it, you can't change it. For example, if there's a chained records of real estate information of the sales of houses and stuff like that, and somebody wants to change the price of the house because the tax is too high, then you can't change it, because you already published the hash of your land record transaction. It would be very difficult to obtain the same hash for that block by tweaking the price and then adding something else to it. So this is where blockchain technology is evolving, in the sense people are thinking about, what do I really need? I mean, is it a truly distributed thing? Is it more centralized but shared? Is it selectively replicated like the Corda thing? So think about those kinds of aspects when you try to leverage the distributed ledger technology. Now, so that's where the public blockchain or the Bitcoin blockchain is one flavor. Decentralized. Do you want you do want the trust to be decentralized with this distributed set of nodes. Cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens are sort of fading right now because of the scare of anonymous usage and stuff like that. Do you really need distributed consensus in the true nature of distributed computing, or can you get some automated endorsements and process the transaction faster and things like that? Do you really need proof of work, which is in the Bitcoin blockchain? And in most cases, you could do with a permission blockchain. Now, if you think about smart city use cases, there are a lot of people engaging with the system. But does that mean it's a public blockchain? It could be, if it's pollution monitoring and everybody's trying to vote and say what is the what they are measuring. You could think of a public blockchain kind of consensus mechanism to determine the level of pollution. But if somebody is just needing access to the smart city system, then probably all they need is a username, login at the application level, and just a server that brings everybody in and represents them on the blockchain. So you only need a small set of nodes managing a distributed ledger. Now, if you have land records, who are the distributed entities at that point? I mean, do you really need to, do you really have a blockchain situation there, or is it a centralized repository, but maybe some auditory agency in the government that says, give me a copy so that you can't tamper with it. You know, so minimally extend, the need for the blockchain system, just based on the use case, and we shouldn't blindly use a system, in just one flavor of it. So we need to think about what's the best way to use something. And Bharadwaj was talking about, hey, I might do some analytics at the edge, but I don't want to expose, I only want to expose the result. Those kinds of things are called zero knowledge proof systems. There is essentially a logic or a circuit that executes that says, okay, and this example that they'll give is if you have a driver's license, you want to know that you're older than age 21, but you don't want to reveal the date of birth. So, the system just attaches a certificate associated